The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Are we living in a world that the strongest is always right and they can get everything that they want on a silver platter? Is this the kind of world we are building for ourselves? That now nothing matters. The only thing that you need is your strength. The United States of America is now breaking its own rules. These are the same people who are preaching democracy to the whole world. But these are people who always decide who they think is the right person in another man's land. Yet, whenever they are voting, nobody decides with them. This is a scary situation. The Prime Minister of Barbados also added her voice. And we have to all resist this. We need not to champion this agenda that the strongest is always right. If this was done by Russia in Ukraine, these are the same people who rise up and say they have broken international law. But with what the United States of America has done, proves that there is nothing called international law. Because it's like there are some people that are above the law.
We are not naive, and we understand that where large powers contend, large powers very often will want to show testicular fortitude. And that testicular fortitude may have negative impact and implications for small countries such as ours. I wanted to say Happy New Year to each and every one of you, but the last 24 hours have proven to be exceedingly challenging. And it is important that we speak to the country to be able to ensure that on the multiple fronts that we have been affected in the last 24 hours, that we keep everyone up to date and to let people know that things are under control with respect to the consequences that we are now currently facing. It is fair to say that what we saw happen last night in Venezuela is uncharted territory. It is also fair to say that what we saw happen in Barbados last night must also become a thing of the past, and to that extent the law enforcement officers have also met with me, so that I am here for dual reasons today and not just one, but any one of the two would have been sufficient to bring me to address the people of this nation. With respect to the first matter, with respect to Venezuela's and what is happening in Caracas and broader Venezuela, about just around 3 o'clock this morning, I was awoken, well, not even awoken because I really wasn't sleeping, and I saw that we were having difficulties, and from then was in contact with other colleague heads of government as well as the Secretary General of CARICOM. And we had an urgent heads meeting from which you would have seen a statement earlier today. That meeting took place just after 5 o'clock this morning. And at that stage we recognized it was too early a stage for us to make any defining comment. That is still the position, because as we speak, matters are unfolding every half hour to an hour. You are as aware of the statements being made by different players, from the President of the United States of America to the Secretary of State to others, just as we are. Contend, large powers very often will want to show testicular fortitude, and that testicular fortitude may have negative impact and implications for small countries such as ours. I wanted to say Happy New Year to each and every one of you, but the last 24 hours have proven to be exceedingly challenging, and it is important that we speak to the country to be able to ensure that on the multiple fronts that we have been affected in the last 24 hours, that we keep everyone up to date and to let people know that things are under control with respect to the consequences that we are now currently facing. It is fair to say that what we saw happen last night in Venezuela is uncharted territory. It is also fair to say that what we saw happen in Barbados last night must also become a thing of the past, and to that extent the law enforcement officers have also met with me, so that I am here for dual reasons today and not just one, but any one of the two would have been sufficient to bring me to address the people of this nation. With respect to the first matter, with respect to Venezuela's and what is happening in Caracas and broader Venezuela, about just around 3 o'clock this morning, I was awoken, well, not even awoken because I really wasn't sleeping, and I saw that we were having difficulties, and from then was in contact with other colleague heads of government as well as the Secretary General of CARICOM, and we had an urgent heads meeting from which you would have seen a statement earlier today. That meeting took place just after 5 o'clock this morning. And at that stage, we recognized it was too early a stage for us to make any defining comment. That is still the position, because as we speak, matters are unfolding every half hour to an hour. You are as aware of the statements being made by different players, from the President of the United States of America to the Secretary of State to others, just as we are. But where Barbados becomes affected is on a number of areas, and we would have said this previously, which is why we continue to assert that small states really can only survive in an international rules-based order. For us, we always said that conflict would have consequences, and many of you asked, what would those consequences be? What would they look like? Well, we're living them out today. With the actions taken in Venezuela, a number of disruptions took place, primarily with respect to our airspace, or planes coming from the US, I should say. There are 3 major areas in the region, Eastern and Southern Caribbean, and then one in Puerto Rico, 4 altogether in the Caribbean, that effectively manage the upper flight space. But as you would appreciate, Barbados is probably the biggest hub closest to Venezuela in terms of tourism, and therefore in terms of air flights and in terms of hotel accommodation and cruise accommodation, we would inevitably be affected.
Just a few questions from me quickly. I know you said it's still early days as it relates to a CARICOM position and statement. However, I am with hearing terms such as a reboot of the Monroe Doctrine coming back to play with this attack on Venezuela. What is Barbados' position on the actual event itself?
Let me be very clear, Colville. Venezuela is our friend. The United States of America is our friend. In fact, in both instances, we have family relations with both countries. By the same token, the Caribbean community has been the entity that we have chosen as a matter of first principles to align our foreign policy with. When the heads of government met this morning, all of the persons were not there because it was an emergency early meeting. We took a decision that we will wait for other information to become present. And when that happens, we will certainly act collectively, and I do not want in any way to prejudice the integrity of that consultative process with CARICOM. Having said that, I've been very clear that our principles are very, very clear, and that small states, and by small I don't only mean as small as Barbados, but much larger than Barbados, but still considered small. Small states can only survive in an international rules-based order, and that therefore anything that happens that runs contrary to that would be of grave concern to us as a people in Barbados, but equally as to the region. So without prejudice, I will await any further consultations on the specifics of this incident, but I just share with you the principles that mean a lot to us beyond the normal international law principles.
And a follow-up question, Madam PM. You mentioned that basically no further escalation within Venezuela, the short-term impacts should likely pass quickly. What are the permutations as it relates to the potential long-term impacts on our tourism?
Colville, we simply don't know. For me to speculate and to conjecture anything now would be just simply that, conjecture. Can't do it. I ask you to allow the events of the next few days to play out. There are perspectives as to what has transpired in Venezuela that I suspect will continue to play out in the next few days. So I do not think that we are in a position to offer any meaningful commentary at this stage. What I can say is that we are dealing with the consequences of the conflict. And the consequences of the conflict have been exceedingly disruptive to both of our ports of entry, the Grantley Adams International Airport and the Bridgetown Port. And to that extent, there are human realities because those disruptions have meant that people have been affected, and not only wealthy people visit our nation, so that there are some people who will not be able to take care of themselves in the circumstances. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, and between the rooms that remain from the BHTA as well as contingency plans that we have for other facilities, not just for today, but as you correctly said, should something happen again. President Trump did say that there may well be a second strike. We don't know. By the same token, we are hoping and praying that there will be a de-escalation of any such conflict, because, as I've said over and over, escalation and war, of conflict and war, does not serve anyone's interest. And Barbados has always held the position that where there can be dialogue, where there can be conversation, let us have it, and let us see where we can find a common place. The truth is that that is why the UN system also exists, and I fully anticipate that they too will have to have a ventilation of these issues. But at the same time, irrespective of wherever you started in this argument, and the perspective as to who was right and who was wrong and who is not right, let us end up today at 4 o'clock saying we pray for no further escalation. In fact, we pray for de-escalation and we pray for dialogue. Persons will feel justified in a show of force. Persons will feel justified that they are acting in accordance with their law. Others will argue that it is a complete breach of international law. Whatever it is, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, we are saying, let us continue to call and pray for de-escalation and for the absence of conflict, because we are now facing firsthand how conflict can affect not just lives, but livelihoods in the southern and eastern Caribbean. And Barbados, to that extent, while we are not the closest to Venezuela, Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago are. Grenada and St. Vincent and Barbados are the next line of countries after Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago. But among those five, Barbados probably has the biggest logistics hub for tourism. So you now begin to understand why I speak and why I have been speaking in the terms that I have, without necessarily getting in to
And as Africans, we need to fight against this, because we are the weakest. It means that anybody at all can come into Africa and decide which leader in Africa they think is best for them and who they think isn't. You understand? And they can remove this leader without any of us being able to do anything. Not in Africa, not in the diaspora. So this is something we need to fight against. And this is even the time for Africans, not only those in Africa continent, but even our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, like Jamaica and the rest. This is the time for us to start seeing ourselves as one and merging ourselves together under one unified force. If we continue to live under this division that these people created for us, it will be easy. Yesterday it was Nigeria in the name of fighting ISIS. Tomorrow it will be another country. And as long as they have resources in Africa that they think they love, they will continue to be doing this, because we've seen clearly that what the United States of America did in Venezuela is actually for the oil, for the natural resources, and not because Nicolas Maduro was any of the things that they claim that he is. Because as far as we know, there's nobody that is an angel. When it comes to the things that they are labeling against Nicolas Maduro, everybody is in that soup, because we are hearing their opposition leaders also labeling such allegations against these same people. So this is the time for us as Africans to unite. We are in scary days. Like our all in all, Captain Ibrahim Traore rightfully warned us that we should be prepared for the days ahead, because in this 2026 henceforth, we are going to be seeing a lot. Like he said, it's going to be cold, it's going to be cold, it's going to be bloody, and it's going to be deadly. And within some few days that he said this, we've started seeing the signs all over the world. So we should be prepared as Africans. And in this case, it is a unity of the African that matters most. We can never win when we are divided. That's why we are seeing that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso leaders are merging everything together under one leadership. And this is the motive of the African. Like Yori Museveni said, this was why they created the Pan-African whatever, which we know today has become a Western tool. That just some few people rose against it, and the majority couldn't take a stand against the few people who were trying to police themselves. But this time round, if we continue to be walking on our own separate paths, it will be difficult. And if we continue to be puppets to these people, it will be difficult. This is the time we need as Africans to be Africans and to fight for our rightful place. We don't have to allow the neo-colonialism to take place on our soil anymore. This was what Dr. Kwame Nkrumah warned us against. And it is you and I that need to fight against this with everything that we have, because this was what our leaders were fighting against. Now it is you and I. We must also follow suit to make sure we get ourselves the liberation that we want. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In Barbados,